lowest price.
Yeah, these are just some random thoughts. I really like Eric Clapton. I was a huge fan of the band that he was in the 60s called Cream. And I love his personal story because if you know anything about Eric Clapton and a lot of these rock stars from the 60s and 70s, they had hard lives. He lost his son. I think his son fell out of a window and died. And this is during a time when he was trying to get sober and stay clean. He had a very bad heroin addiction, very bad cocaine addiction. There was actually a documentary that I seen that actually had footage of Eric Clapton actually sniffing coke in the documentary. And he was pretty far gone. They say that he became a recluse. This is some footage from 1990 when he was starting to come back. But you see the cigarette lodged inside the neck of the guitar. That's awesome. That's classic. You see that, Sig? 1990, that was the year I was born, baby. Get him, Eric. What gets me about that era, I remember when people used to smoke cigarettes. I remember the year I remember when, like, you would go inside of a smoking place, and when people were smoking, like a restaurant, and you would come out and your jacket would smell like smoke for about a week. So I think it was a good idea that they stopped public smoking, because my dad tells me that they used to smoke cigarettes in hospitals, on airplanes. It was crazy. And, yeah, man, Eric Clapton, I just always, like, same thing with Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. He was a guy that had a very intense, hardcore heroin addiction and cocaine addiction, but not too much has been publicized about it. I mean, Robert Plant actually talked about his cocaine addiction. And these guys are considered the landmarks, the historical landmarks of rock music. These are the guys that are the kings of rock, and they all had drug addictions, you know. Robert Plant, I'm trying to find some footage of these guys talking about their addiction. But, yeah, it's awesome, man. It's just awesome that all these guys survived. Yeah, and you know, their drummer, Bonham, died from alcohol.
Well, I had a big affair with drugs. And in retrospect now, I mean, I stopped taking drugs 11 years ago and one day.
So you really kind of like an anniversary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just found that my whole personality had really changed, and that I really became quite paranoid about things. I'm very possessive, and I was taking cocaine, and I found it, the high wasn't the high, it was like I was so possessive and so kind of hoarding and all this crap. And I finally just stopped. I said, stop, don't do this, don't do it to yourself. See what you've become. You know, I just stopped. It's a psychological addiction, it's not a physical addiction, I think. It poisons your system. But I stopped and walked away from it. I was very fortunate to do that. And
So yeah, but Jimmy Page doesn't speak about his addiction. He pretends that it never happened. But everybody knows that the band basically had to break up in the late 70s because he just couldn't tour anymore because he was on drugs. And these guys were balling. They were like the first band to have their own private plane. They flew around in a Led Zeppelin plane. I mean, they were making bank. I bet yeah. And it's just always, it's funny to me because nowadays it seems like the rappers want to be like the rock musicians. It's like an element, there's a certain energy of rock and roll in today's rap. They dye their hair these weird colors. They wear these rock star clothes. They get high like rock stars. And it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. But I'm happy that these guys survived. Hold on, what? Your content was removed due to a violation of our community. Okay. Medical misinformation. What? They say that I spread medical misinformation. Yeah, removing the content doesn't make sense to me.